Hello, generations, young, old, and everyone in between. Welcome to Generation Apollo, where we believe in taking a stand against online censorship. And today, on the latest episode of Generation Apollo Reacts, I am looking at the latest news and events update straight from the official YouTube blog. For those of you who don't know which post I'm talking about, just go there. It's literally one of the first posts there. It's the post on supporting the 2020 U.S. election. This is the post that's making the rounds and getting everyone all fired up, and for good reason. It's basically YouTube is saying that they are now going to remove and censor any and all videos claiming allegations of fraud in the U.S. election or any sort of irregularities or any discussion on Dominion voting machines. So we'll see how long this video lasts. But yeah, anyway, so YouTube is now basically going full-on Chinese CCP style censorship, and now basically just saying, yeah, you're not allowed to have this discussion anymore. We're no longer going to allow any content that even remotely questions the outcome of the 2020 election. Not happening anymore. So they've basically said they're going to start removing content now as they please, even though it doesn't officially violate their terms of service. And I know it doesn't because I already checked it. There's guidelines for fake engagement, spam and deceptive practices, violent and dangerous content, harassment and bullying, hate speech, violent and graphic content, COVID-19 misinfo policy, that's a new one. Let's see, child safety, custom thumbnails, nudity, explicit content, as well as regulated goods, sale of illegal and regulated goods and content featuring firearms. But from what I can see in the terms of service, nothing that says that we're not allowed to talk about allegations of voter fraud. So now YouTube has basically admitted outright that they're going to start censoring and removing content that doesn't even violate their own community guidelines. And this comes only weeks after they announced in their last major update to their terms of service that they were going to reserve the right to place ads in videos that were not monetized and for users that were not part of the partnership program. So basically, they're going to put ads on videos and collect the money for themselves and not cut the creators in on any of the content. And now they're saying that they're going to just remove any content outright that they just don't agree with. Oh my gosh, it's almost as if YouTube is in a rush to try to go the way of MySpace. Anyway, I'm not going to read the entire blog post. I'm just going to quote the important parts, but I'll provide the link in the description for those of you that want to read the whole thing in its entirety. But anyway, let's look at the one part here that's actually the most important, the one that's capturing everybody's attention. Our community guidelines prohibit spam, scams, and other manipulated media, coordinated influence operations, and any content that seeks to incite violence. Since September, we've terminated over 8,000 channels and thousands of harmful and misleading elections-related videos for violating our existing policies. Over 77% of those removed videos were taken down before they had 100 views. Remember, folks, I said they don't have any specific policies in their terms of service that say that you can't talk about this, so, take that with a grain of salt. We also work to make sure that the line between what is removed and what is allowed is drawn in the right place. Our policies prohibit misleading viewers about when and where to vote. We also disallow content alleging widespread fraud or errors changing the outcome of a historic U.S. presidential election. However, in some cases that has meant allowing controversial views on the outcome or process of counting votes of a current election as election officials have worked to finalize the counts. Now, did you hear that, folks, right there? That one part. We also disallow content alleging widespread fraud or errors that change the outcome of the election. There they go. They said it right there. And now on to the next paragraph where they get into this a little more detail. Yesterday was the safe harbor deadline for the U.S. presidential election, and enough states have certified their election results to determine a presidential elect. No, not all of them. Not all of them have done that yet. Given that, we will start removing any piece of content uploaded today or any time thereafter, as of the time of its posting on December 9th, that misleads people by alleging that widespread fraud or errors change the outcome of the 2020 U.S. presidential election in line with our approach towards historical U.S. presidential elections. For example, we will remove videos claiming that a presidential candidate won the election due to widespread software glitches or counting errors. We will begin enforcing this policy today and will ramp up in the weeks to come. As always, news coverage and commentary on these issues can remain on our site if there's sufficient education, documentary, or scientific or artistic content. Well, there you go, folks. CCP-style censorship is now officially here. I mean, if the powers that be over at YouTube are supposedly so confident in the integrity of the election outcome, then why would they even feel the need to remove content that questions its validity? You know, I'm going to let you guys in on my little theory of what I think the future of YouTube is going to be and where this is going and why they're doing all of this. Now, some of you have probably already figured it out by now, but for those of you who haven't, well, here's my idea. You see, YouTube isn't just looking to become the next Netflix. They're looking to become like what cable TV was back in the day. They want to become the big multi-billion-dollar monopoly. Now, think back to 2006 when Google acquired YouTube, just shortly after it had actually formed. Now, at the time when Google bought YouTube for a little more than $1.6 billion, YouTube was actually running at a loss. And this is because video hosting websites are generally not very profitable by their nature. And this problem isn't unique to just YouTube. It's an issue that all video hosting websites eventually face when they get big enough, because as users keep uploading more and more content, the site has to continuously grow. It has to continuously acquire new storage space, and that all costs money to purchase and maintain. So when any video hosting website eventually gets big enough, they come to a point where they have to make a choice as to how they plan to cover the cost of their operation. Now, option one is to charge the cost directly to the users themselves. So, for example, you could have your website where a user could sign up for free initially, but if they want to have access to some of the more premium features, they got to pay. Now, when you go down that route, you got to really sell the experience to them, because not everyone's going to be willing to sign up for a site if they know they got to pay just to access any of the basic decent features. So that could potentially limit your site growth, so that's something else to bear in mind. But if you want to keep the site free for your users, then the only other way to cover your operating expenses is to rely on advertising revenue from sponsors. Now, the advantage to doing it that way is you get a big cash infusion that can help your site grow tremendously. But there's always a downside to everything. The problem with that is, as soon as you start taking ad revenue, the sponsors pretty much start dictating orders. Because now they have a carrot that they can dangle over your head. They can say, we don't want our ads playing on certain kinds of videos because we don't want our brand being associated with certain types of content. So now you have incentive, or maybe I should rephrase that, you should say pressure, to make sure that only high quality videos end up on your website and to filter out all the junk, so that way all you have is content that's worthy of sponsors. And you'll do whatever it takes to keep that sweet, sweet ad revenue rolling in. Now, speaking of ad revenue, this is where we get into another little aspect of what made YouTube so successful in the first place. You see, back when YouTube first started out, there were other competing video hosting websites. But it was YouTube's monetization option for content creators that helped set it apart from all the rest and helped attract its major audience, thus securing its position as the top premier video hosting site. And so everyone flocked to YouTube, and all of its major competitors eventually faded away. And of course, everything was good for a time as everybody enjoyed the monetization option and made lucrative careers off of their channels. But unfortunately, the problem was this was not to last. Fast forward a few years and remember back to when I said that Google had purchased YouTube and they were operating at a loss. Well, think about what happens when a big company acquires a small company that's either hemorrhaging money or not doing very well. Well, naturally, they're going to look at any way they can to make that asset that they recently acquired profitable, which usually means cutting staff, cutting back certain products, reintroducing new products, or restructuring the entire business model. Anything to make that asset profitable. And so now that brings us to why is YouTube doing what it's doing? Why is it censoring content? And why is it cutting users left and right? Well, it's very simple. How else are they going to make themselves more profitable when they have to share in the revenue with users? Well, easy. They stop sharing in the revenue with the users. That's basically what they want to do. You see, YouTube wants to take away monetization altogether for everyone, not just the controversial content creators. See, the controversial channels are an easy target, and hence that's why they're getting hit first. But eventually, even the family-friendly content creators will eventually get demonetized as well. This is not necessarily motivated by politics, although I'm sure some of them will definitely use politics as an excuse, and I'm sure there's probably people in the higher up positions at YouTube who definitely are political ideologues. But in reality, it's all a business. It's a business decision that they decided they wanted to make ages ago, and they're slowly implementing it. And when everything is all said and done and the dust settles, The only people who will be making any money on YouTube will be the big mainstream media outlets. They're the only ones that will have monetization. And we'll all naturally blame SJWs and leftists, when in reality, they're all just the useful idiots that will get thrown under the bus later so that we don't talk about the real reason why YouTube is doing what it's doing. YouTube just doesn't want to share in the profits anymore. If they want it all for themselves, it's as simple as that. As soon as YouTube thought it had crushed all of its major competition, they decided they wanted to get rid of the one thing that made them successful to begin with, because they feel that they no longer need to offer it. It's no different than when a large corporate-owned department store like, say, Walmart comes to a small town and drives all the mom-and-pop shops out of business by pricing their goods so cheap that the small stores can't compete. No big deal for Walmart to operate in the red for a few quarters because they've got billions of dollars in reserves. But the mom and pop shops, unfortunately, they don't have that luxury. Now, the consumer benefits initially for a time by having really cheap goods available to them. But once all the mom and pop shops are gone, the big stores suddenly raise their prices, knowing that their customers have no other alternative now. And that's basically what YouTube is doing. They're in the later stages of securing their position as an overreaching monopoly. But monopolies never last forever, and on the internet this is especially true, and what YouTube doesn't realize is that their overzealous censorship policy is exactly what is contributing to their eventual downfall, because that is what's driving people into the waiting arms of alt-tech and their rising competitors. YouTube is unknowingly creating the very competition that will eventually replace it. In other words, they're basically going to go the way of MySpace, because look what happened with MySpace. Facebook didn't rise up and replace MySpace by being a better platform. All they had to do was just wait for MySpace to keep making one bad investment and one blunder after another, and eventually just siphon up all the people that came over from their site. And so here we are, with YouTube giving its content creators yet another giant middle finger. So what do you all think? Do you think this is the last straw that will finally break the camel's back and usher in the slow and eventual demise of YouTube and send it the way of MySpace? Or do you think they'll eventually succeed and become the next cable TV? Sound off in the comment section and let me know. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe, like, and share to help this channel grow. Also, don't forget to follow me on my other platforms as well, including BitChute, Twitter, Minds, Reddit, the Library app, and now I'm also on Parler as well. All links for those sites will be in the description. And lastly, if you're a fellow content creator and you don't have pages on BitChute, Rumble, Parler, or any of the other alt-tech websites, seriously, you need to get on that right now, guys. Don't wait until YouTube drops the hammer on you and basically catches you off guard and you're left wondering what the hell happened, because it's only going to go downhill from here now that YouTube apparently feels that it can just censor and delete whatever it wants if it feels that it doesn't suit its narrative. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you again for tuning in to Generation Apollo.